them in just a second. But what I wanted to cover is just the agenda. So we'll give a quick introduction to what the program is and how it works. I'm going to introduce all the panelists. And then we'll save maybe like 15 minutes at the end for questions. But for those of you attending, if you do have a question, feel free to drop it in the Q&A box. And that's accessible, by the way, at the bottom of the Zoom screen. You just hover your mouse over it and you should see the Q&A button. Feel free to ask a question whenever you want. I'll try to work them in as best as I can. And if nothing else, we can answer your questions at the end of the session. So that's how it's going to work. So let's get started. So hi, everybody. My name is Will Kent. I'm the program manager for the Scholars and Scientists program. And I'm joined by these 5 great panelists. I'm so happy that everyone could attend and join. So let me just introduce everybody. We have Hassan Afzal, who's from the University of Tennessee-Chattanooga, Yao Yao, who's from the University of Georgia, Hillel Gray, who is from Ohio University, but recently retired. Congratulations. And
excuse me, it's Miami University of Ohio.
I'm so sorry. I'm from Ohio, and I do this all the time. Miami University of Ohio, not Ohio University. That's bad mark on my part. Anderson de Andrade, who's from Rutgers, and Tasha Bergson-Michelson from Castilleja University or School, Castilleja. Thank you all for joining us. What we're going to do is we're going to discuss a recent set of courses that all of these panelists have participated in around the upcoming election. So the Scholars and Scientists program is a program that Wiki Education, who I work for, runs to encourage subject area experts, how to add their research, resources, expertise to Wikipedia, usually in a very specific subject area. So we work with all sorts of experts across many disciplines. We've worked with physicists before, art historians, open access advocates, graphic designers, a lot of different people. And this particular set of courses is focused on people who are passionate about politics and the upcoming election. And so we've run, maybe like 6 or 7 of these courses. There's some happening right now, and we've got 5 more that are going to run between now and November. And the whole idea is just to make sure that all these articles, 1, exist about the upcoming election, and 2, are up to date because things change pretty quickly. And we want to make sure that these articles are chock full of reliable sources, that they adhere to Wikipedia policies and guidelines, and that they're written in a way that's digestible and that anyone can understand. And so this can range from articles about people running for the first time. It can be ballot measures. It can be federal stories that are developing or local stories. So we're casting a wide net. And we really push for the participants of the courses to work on things that they're passionate about. So we don't dictate like you have to write about this person or this concept. It's all like kind of self-driven. The idea being that if you're excited about something or curious about something, you'll do a great job researching and writing about it. So the courses last 8 weeks. We meet once a week for an hour virtually on Zoom, much like this. We cover like how to write for Wikipedia because it's actually pretty complicated. And then it's up to the participants, you, to go and write the articles, and we offer feedback for the drafting process, and then we kind of rinse and repeat and work on as many articles as we can. And usually things go pretty smoothly. Every now and again, there's a dust up with sourcing or with phrasing or with other Wikipedians. We'll cover all of that during our session. But the whole idea with the course is that we want it to be a supportive, uplifting experience, because writing for Wikipedia can be kind of lonely or intimidating or overwhelming because there's no manual. And we also want to connect participants with kind of like-minded folks who are kind of curious and excited to contribute knowledge to the public. And so that's our goal as Wiki Education. And I think I'll quiet down now and start asking our panelists some questions so you can hear from them. So once again, thanks for being here. And we'll kick things off with some takeaways from the course. You all have participated in it, and I'm wondering what some major takeaways are, like whether it was like learning about Wikipedia, learning about yourself, learning about how to write in this topic area specifically. Feel free to take this question in any direction you want. Who wants to go first? Feel free to unmute and take it away.
I will. I can go first.
Thanks, Hassan.
All right. Well, I get to know about this program through MPSA and Wiki collaboration. And three things stood out to me, and I was so captivated and grateful. First thing, there is a trail who's like, auditing or writing all these things, and it's always transparent, like, who's writing this, who's editing this, what are the sources and stuff. Number two, and like, it's very fact checked, every information, even if the tone is sometimes like, it seems like, leaning towards one side or something, there is option to edit them. So, and number three is I find it that the whole process is rigorous peer review and impartial, at least to me. And these are the three key takeaways I have taken from that course, like, how transparent, how rigorous, and how peer reviewed it is. And like, we can just gently correct something if that information is updated in later weeks and stuff. So these are my like, three things on top of my mind doing that MPSA Wiki collaboration course. Now, thanks for like including me in this. We'll appreciate that.
Thanks for joining, Hassan. That's great. Yeah, Tasha.
I think like many of the people in several of these cohorts I've gone through, I had been teaching students to edit without actually getting deeply into editing myself, which was extremely empowering and uplifting. And as you said, it's almost impossible to figure out how to edit by yourself. The documentation is so overwhelming, and editing in community is extremely meaningful to me. I actually have a group that meets on Zoom once a week and we edit together. I mean, we just hang out together and edit. And sometimes we're like, this week, we're going to learn how to do this. And it all grew out really of the first of these that I did with you back during COVID, to the point where I've actually traveled across the country to meet people who I met in this cohort. So it's helped me find like-minded people. We work together and we continue to inform and support each other's work. And it was just really special through the course to learn what that could be.
That's awesome. And yeah, Tasha, well, multiples of us here have taken several courses in multiple cohorts, which is great. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing. Any other takeaways anyone wants to share? Yeah, Yao.
Thank you, Will. And the first takeaway for me is just don't be afraid of editing Wikipedia, because before this class, I always think I'm not that expert or I'm not that proficient to editing any page. Even I have some insight into the page. So I always think I'm not good enough, I'm not prepared. But after taking the class, I feel everyone can contribute your knowledge or even just update with some resources, like the data, like from maybe right now in 2023 and you find some data in 2024 and you just can edit or update with the page. And this is really helpful for anyone who use Wikipedia, because Wikipedia is open platform to everyone and everyone can contribute your knowledge or your experts in this field, and everyone will benefit. And another takeaway, I think, is just like you said, the Wikipedia editing process may be complicated, but this class have taught us how not simple, but how organized the process is. Like we had learned how to edit the picture, how to edit the data, or how to edit the title or something. And it looks like difficult, but Wikipedia already has some code or have some template. We can just copy and paste. And this makes the class or editing process really, really easy. At least you can just use a template, or you can just paste, or you can just like me. I always email Will about how to edit this one and how to do this. And this really makes the editing process is very helpful or easy access to anyone. So this is my takeaways.
That's great. Thanks, Yao. And feel free to email me anytime.
Yeah, no.
Hello.
Yeah, one of the I don't know. I do like what people are saying. Like in some ways it's very easy, but I think when you're in this class, if you're a newcomer to Wikipedia, then you learn a lot about yourself. Like I did not happen to be a newcomer. I had done a lot of editing before I started these classes. But for people who are just first into it, it's just amazing. You can be an incredible expert on something. And then when you're facing like, okay, now I'm going to shape this major website, right? Like this is a website that millions of people are reading, and it is a major source of information. And for some people, you know, it's a little bit uncomfortable. And I think they realize like, oh, I need to figure out how I myself am going to get myself to be editing this stuff. And that some people come from, you know, very sophisticated technical knowledge, and all of a sudden they're writing like in this encyclopedic mode. And the other thing I think that happens is you find out how you are socially, how you are socially with the other people in the group, and how you are socially on Wikipedia, right? You could be an introvert in certain respects, and then you can find yourself in Wikipedia just like feeling free form in how you go about it, or you could be an extrovert and all of a sudden freeze up, depending on what happens with you behind the scenes. So for people who are not familiar with this, there are thousands of Wikipedia editors, and it's not like oh, maybe it is like your typical college department. So I don't exactly know what department you're in. I happen to be in a very easy department, but sometimes you'll be talking to editors about an article and it will be very intense. And so in these classes, I saw some scholars who were in our classes just thrived on that. They totally loved that. And some of them were like, no, I don't have the time or energy to like argue with editors over like this sentence. And so I think you learn yourself about how much you're committed to, you know, shaping Wikipedia, what ways you want to do that. And I think the environment of the course is a good way to do that.
Awesome. Thanks, Hillel. Yeah, we try to make the course as open as possible in terms of the experience that you want. We want to foster that because there's so many different styles. And it's nice to hear that it sounds like at least that part of it works. So that's good. This is a great segue into my next question, though, because it's no secret that Wikipedia is very widely read. The articles that we work on are often seen by, you know, hundreds of thousands, if not tens of thousands of eyes, maybe even more. And I'm wondering how you feel about informing the public. These are articles and pages that could be very significant, that people will be reading and will continue to read. So I'm just wondering if you've had time to reflect on that, if you have any feelings about it. So feel free to share. Anderson.
Yeah, so I mean, before starting my PhD program, I worked as a public school teacher for 6 years, and I think I approached this kind of role with Wikipedia in the same vein. You know, you have to stay really reflexive. You are always trying to like see where are your own biases that you're putting forward, and it's very important to try to stay neutral. And trying to stay neutral is something that's super hard, if I think could be argued almost impossible. And so I think like as I was going through this, thinking about knowledge creation in and of itself, it's so complex and so tricky. And it has to be kind of done in this democratic process where you have different people all editing kind of the same piece to try to create a more fluid and more objective kind of piece of knowledge for people to be able to go back and look at.
That's great. I agree exactly with what you're saying. Tasha.
I would build on that. So I took 2 election courses, one on social movements and one on women in politics. And in particular, in the social movements, I chose to write about something that I feel strongly about, that I was extremely worried about the response to, as Hillel knows, and that I felt wasn't getting coverage, which was the censorship that's going on in research databases across multiple states and nationwide in some instances, and the legislation against that. For me, it was a challenge because I mostly write about people, and I determined that in that class I wanted to try writing about not a person. But the neutrality piece, as Anderson said, was challenging and good for me. Although interestingly, as part of the process, I discovered that all the pages on book censorship were also not neutral in tone. And so I have an ongoing project trying to rewrite them so that they don't just reflect positive book censorship as a social good, but look at the ways it arises and as well as impacts, and just kind of even out the language a bit. So it's been a kind of interesting experience that's kept on going, and that is actually quite pertinent in a lot of elections.
Thanks, Tasha. I think it's important what you just said about it being like an iterative process, and you can make your edits as part of the course, all your edits for the course or after the course, but like the articles will continue just like they've been there before. And just like being another link in the chain, leaving like a couple different changes can have a big impact down the line, but the conversation is never really finished. And it is a conversation, right? Like new research will come out, new sources will come out. And I feel like Wikipedia is really great at if you want to change something, you can. That's the whole notion behind it. But a lot of people don't know how to do that, don't know how to step up. So it makes me really happy that you're one of the people who do know how to do that, and that you're working on it over a long period of time, I think is a great approach. So thanks for sharing that story. All right. Well, my next question for you is kind of related to it, which is, I'm wondering how you felt about the work that you did in the class in particular, like the set of articles that you worked on, your own personal experience, because every single article has a different set of requirements that are needed for editing it, and we all have our own personal investments and things. So for what you did, how'd you feel about that experience? Yeah, please.
I was editing the 25th Amendment, which is young voters' rights. And when I choose this paper or this article, I was thinking I have some knowledge about the 25th Amendment. But when I really go to this article, I feel like the Wikipedia is broader than my knowledge, because maybe my knowledge only for political science or for the 25th Amendment, for the Constitution, that perspective. But Wikipedia has some, like, they would include some background, and they have some data related to different state, and just they're more broader than what I thought. So I think the editing process, one thing is I can contribute my knowledge from maybe the Constitution perspective or political science perspective to this page. But this editing process also gave me some information about how this process or how this topic in other fields, maybe in the historical field, or maybe there's some debate I didn't know before. And also during the editing process, because we need to make the every editing or every argument or the data you put in the Wikipedia to be reliable. So you need to have some reference. And I remember when I edit the page, and we'll have like question me about where is the resources, where you get the sentence or the data come from. So this make me feels like actually editing Wikipedia, there's like we talked earlier, there's many eyes on your page, and not only from Wikipedia team, it's also from someone who view your page. And this is like a discussion with others who will view this one or who will edit based on your edit. Because someone can comment on your page, or you can track who edit your page or doing something. And this is a great opportunity to communicate with Wikipedia community, or someone just who share the same interests. So I think editing the page not only can contribute my knowledge to this article or today's topic, I can also communicate with someone who share the same interests on the same topic through discussion or through the editing process. And also I can have some other information or some other background I don't know from other fields through editing or finding the resources or doing something related to the same topic. So this is really a good experience for me.
Thanks, Yao. Yeah, Hillel, please.
Gee, I have so much to say about this. I mean, I think, one thing that we can contribute to the articles that I think is sometimes missing in Wikipedia is that we have access to really high quality sources. I tend to think academic sources are really important. And you'll often see articles built on, say, other kinds of reliable sources, but like newspaper articles or something like that, you know, BBC article material. And all of us have access to all sorts of knowledge that really just by putting the sources into Wikipedia will start to improve the media literacy of people who visit Wikipedia and people who decide to edit it. Because even if the particular writing we do doesn't really, you know, carry over, people don't like our sentences or something like this, the Wikipedia articles are built on the sources. And so once we start contributing those sources and people, even people who disagree with how we wrote it up, they see those sources, they have access to those sources, then that will really change the knowledge that's out there through these articles. So I have more to say, but I'll just throw that out there if anybody else, if that resonates or people disagree with that.
I think you're right about that. In the Women in Politics, I worked on a number of women of color who are California state legislators. And in some cases, their pages had been built by people who didn't use sources at all. And so by going through the practice of kind of revising the page as I added sources and seeing what I could corroborate, essentially I knew I was keeping those women in history and in the public narrative, which is ultimately what makes me edit, is the impact it has on how we view ourselves as a society of humans.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm interested in is how people communicate with each other across political differences, across religious differences, across pretty harsh, you know, how do Trump and anti-Trump people talk to each other. So one of the groups that I wrote about in Wikipedia was a group called Braver Angels. Not that anybody needs to know about this kind of group, but so the article already existed, but I don't think even the people of Braver Angels has sort of put together the sense of how much they were studied as a group, because there are scholars who are really interested in civil discourse and studying how Braver Angels workshops had brought people together. And so I was able to add this whole section of sort of the academic study of civil discourse that had been, I don't know, organized by Braver Angels. So that was a pretty meaningful thing for me. And I think, oh, was your question like how we felt about having an impact? Was that the question you're on?
Yeah, that's where I started, but I like where you're going.
One of the things that was really fun was, and I don't know how many of you all tried this, is not only we writing like sentences in Wikipedia, we also get to add images. And so I would go to the people I was writing about, like the organization Braver Angels, and I would get them to give me photographs. And you have to go through a bit of a copyright process. But then I would add all these photographs to the articles, and people say that, you know, images matter nowadays in media. And so I was able to sort of start to meet and engage with the people I was writing about. So that was really a fun thing. And I think they started to learn a little bit about their organization because of the kind of stuff that I was finding out about their organization.
That's fantastic. Thanks, Hillel. Anderson, if I could just like single you out for a second, you wrote an article about a proposition in San Francisco for an election that I actually read and then voted on because you wrote about it, which was really convenient. And I just wish that like there were more articles about this, but there's that assumption that like, oh, Wikipedia will like have what I want to read about, and that's absolutely not true. It's very easy for that like feeling to kind of like overwhelm and kind of lull everyone into a sense of like, oh, it'll be there. It's like on the internet. Everything's on the internet, but it's not until we put it there. So I just wanted to say thank you for your edits, because that was very helpful in informing me and probably, you know, several other thousands of people.
Yeah, I mean, that was like a really fun, that was kind of like my entrance into using Wikipedia, was to look at kind of a very local election and something that was particularly connected with education, which is my research interests. And when it goes down to propositions, there's not always a lot of information about it. And that's often one of the main things that you see on the ballot when you go in. And so being able to kind of create just a Wikipedia page on what this proposition is, how the different council members were voting for it, it's just like one way to, I think, like almost like, I don't know, give the information out. And so after publishing that article, you could see the spike right before the election actually happened and people went in to vote, where there was a number of people that went to see that. And now it's been kind of dropped off because the election has since passed. But luckily, someone went back in and even included the results on the page. So it's interesting to see how people then come in and interact with this kind of material that you create. So it was a great
Yeah.
experience.
Oh, thanks, Anderson. Hello, yeah. Oh, hello, I think you're muted.
There's a question in the chat, and I want, if I click on answer live, what does that mean?
Oh, that just means you're acknowledging that you're answering it live.
Okay, I'm going to answer this question that was said. They liked Hillel's comments about the importance of academic sources. A lot of those sources are behind paywalls. What are our thoughts on that? So a couple things. First of all, you can use any source in any reliable source in Wikipedia that you have access to, you can use, even if other people don't have access to it. So I can go to the Harvard, what's it called? Rare manuscripts library. I can go into any kind of archive. There are archives here locally I can go to. I find information. You'd have to go to Harvard or to the local archive to find that, but you can still use your Wikipedia. So just in terms of whether you can use the source, you can definitely use it. But there are tricks also to enable other people to have access to those sources. Okay, so one thing you should know is that, again, there's this whole world of editors behind the scenes talking about these articles. And Wikipedia has a program that allows editors to get access to things like JSTOR and other academic databases. And Will probably knows more about this than I do, so you could talk about that. Another trick that you can do is you can excerpt directly from the article and put it into what's called the talk page of the article. So of course you can have a little block quote or whatever, you could paraphrase it. But if you want people to be able to critique your paraphrase or disagree with your paraphrase or make it more neutral, that kind of thing, you can go to the talk page and you can copy in whatever content from that article behind the paywall that you want other editors be able to have access to. So Wikipedia is probably not politically in favor of all sorts of paywalls, but they're very tight on copyright, and yet there are ways that we can give other editors access to the same knowledge we have. I'm hoping that answered your question, but if you want to just do a follow-up, that's fine too. And other people probably want to address this too.
Thanks, Hillel. Any other comments on that? That was a perfect encapsulation of how that works. Tasha.
I think it's actually critically important for people who have access behind paywalls to be writing in Wikipedia and bringing some of that knowledge forward. While Hillel was talking about scholarly sources, the access to newspapers from non-primarily white perspective communities is extremely limited, even with a lot of these paywalled sources. So an even smaller portion of people who can access some stuff behind a paywall. So if you're a K-12 student, you're really not accessing any papers that aren't from a predominantly white perspective. And so there are people who are covered deeply in affinitized newspapers, like in Black Historical Press or something, that you would never have access to if we weren't using these paywalled sources. So we can build strong, well-documented articles on important people contemporarily and historically, and movements and so forth, by making use if we have access. And then that gives access to people who otherwise would have none. And to me, that's one of the real beauties of what Wikipedia has to offer.
It's beautifully put. Thank you, Tasha. I agree with that too. Cool. Well, I appreciate the overview of like how you feel about your work. This is great. Makes me super happy as somebody who runs this program. My next question, well, it's just a prompt really, because of the topic area for these courses. is the upcoming election in the United States and politics more generally. I often feel like as one person, like what role can I do? You know, like there's like so much about the media narrative, regardless of the election cycle, like that I don't have control over. But with Wikipedia, as we know, we can just click edit and start to make changes to pages, which does have a substantial change, it turns out. And so I'm just wondering how you feel about being able to participate in the discussion so immediately. And I know many of you work in academia, which isn't known as the fastest moving creature on the planet. So maybe a little compare and contrast if you need more of a prompt.
I mean, coming from working in elementary schools, where if you are working with a 9-year-old and you're trying to teach them fractions one day, you're able to see them learning how to use fractions the next day. And it's a very tangible learn. You've done your work and something has come from it. Now in this PhD, I write and I write and I read and I read, and maybe I'll have one advisor or two advisors skim through it, but ultimately the process is just so much slower, where when you come into Wikipedia and you start working with these different articles, you're able to kind of produce faster, get faster feedback, and you can actually see people engaging with your work more, which I think brings back that more tangible feel. Being able to see the number of views that happen on an article that you write is something that I think is kind of a motivator. But yeah.
That's great. Thanks, Anderson. Yeah, Hassan.
I just want to reiterate with Anderson's point and Will's point, actually all of our point. You know, the beauty of Wikipedia in terms of current events, right? Because it's a living document, right? You know, it continuously iterating, checking, and everybody's contributing. And me as a researcher, when we publish something, it's very difficult, and it just takes time to edit something, update something, or contribute to that article, review article, or running commentary, or a research article or something. To that effect, I really appreciate Wikipedia's contribution in current events. And if something suddenly changes, like, you know, somebody deciding not to rerun for election, or somebody else is stepping up and stuff like that, what are the motivation, what happened, and like, you know, when that's going to take place and stuff, it would be very difficult for most fanciest journal articles or like, you know, behind the paywalls to inform public accurately and like, you know, rigorously. But Wikipedia does have more scope to play a more meaningful role to fill that gap.
Yeah, Tasha.
Sorry, I'm feeling very talkative, but one of the not standards, but major thinking skills in the library field is the notion that authority is constructed and contextual. And to me, Wikipedia is de facto the constructor of authority. And so I find it really powerful. And I think this is why I'm so passionate about teaching students. I think we grow in ourselves when we edit and learn about new parts of the world that we don't know about, new people we don't know about. But again, it creates this authoritative, it creates authority for people who should have it and aren't necessarily granted it through the first 5 links that you get in a search result.
I mean, just to follow up, Tasha, I think there's also a drawback to the way Wikipedia does things as opposed to our academic journals. So one problem is that in Wikipedia, there are lots of people, since so many people can edit, right? Like everybody gets to edit, they say. So you have many people who have an axe to grind. Okay. And so people are creating articles or shaping articles all the time with their particular biases that can be very strong. And if you are not that committed to the article or that material or working on Wikipedia, it could be a little bit overwhelming. And so, I don't know. There are articles about, I don't know how people want, if people probably do not want to talk about the Gaza war and the encampments. But there are some articles about this. I was working on an article about universities and anti-Semitism, which I think is an important topic. But people would put in enormous amounts of current newspaper coverage about these encampments that just sort of overwhelm the article. And if people know about Wikipedia, things are supposed to be done encyclopedically in a proportionate way. And so it could be a problem trying to grapple with that. And I've also come at this from the other side too. I don't know if people follow Jonathan Glazer, who gave the a controversial acceptance speech at the Oscars. He was the one who did a Holocaust-related movie. So there were Wikipedia editors who really didn't want to cover his speech very much, or the controversy around his speech. So I had to keep bringing in sources saying, no, this actually was really controversial. This is the coverage, and so on. So it can come in both ways, that people are trying to, I don't know, make Wikipedia more like a journalistic enterprise, and people who are trying to shut it down from being too much of a journalistic enterprise. And so that's something people might run into. But it is true that in academia, it would be very hard to get certain things into a publication that you can get into Wikipedia that can be very powerful. So I created an article on transgender genocide. Okay. Now, to get that into an academic article, you might need something much more substantive, like court rulings or something that around transgender genocide. But instead, because Wikipedia is built on reliable sources, all I needed was to show that there is discourse out there using the term transgender genocide, and that discourse itself is something that Wikipedia can report on. So I do think there are ways that Wikipedia can do things because of its criteria that you can't get in the academic world.
I love that. Thanks for sharing that perspective, Hillel. I think that's really important, and also just underscores the point that if we don't contribute ourselves, then we're kind of like ceding control of this way of developing knowledge or authority, like Tasha was framing it, and just hoping that someone else does it for us, which is always a slippery slope. So thank you for that. I think we have time for one more prompt from me, and then I'll just open the floor to questions for everybody else. So as you're listening, think of those questions. But for all of you, I'm curious, well, the course is free, so that's fun and nice, but it's actually not, because it takes time to do anything, and your time is precious. So I want to thank you for volunteering that. But it's more than just like an exercise in learning how to write for Wikipedia or informing the public. And I'm curious if this fits into your professional life in any way, if you see it working for you in a way that's beyond these great reasons that we've discussed already, if you've been able to continue to edit or not, and it's okay if you haven't. I'm just wondering if there's a way that you see Wikipedia fitting in with your professional life.
I want to give other people a chance to answer, because I think I've answered every question. So
Yeah, me too. Hassan, Yao, you want to respond to that or skip past?
Yeah, I can answer this question. Like for my professional life, I think I use Wikipedia a lot, because I'm now every concept I have learned or I have encountered. And usually I just think Wikipedia is the most easiest or the efficient way for me to get enough background in some concept, like for example, the votings or elections. And I'll use Wikipedia to search for something, and then I can have the background or the basic information, and then because they have the link to every they have the link of the source or the reference, and if I find something interesting, I'll go to the link and will dig deeper in the topic, and this will help me to get information, or to help me to figure out what I'm interested in or what I want to do my research on. And also, as another perspective, as who have some knowledge of political science or elections, and like we talked earlier, Wikipedia is for basic public, or it's not like academic journals, like maybe some journals like very talk about something like it's very it's very deep or will provide more analysis or something, but this is not included in Wikipedia. But if we encounter some articles or some discussion about this, and I would like to contribute to the current Wikipedia page, like I can provide something like elections, and maybe I read some articles and think this is interesting, or this is a very interesting findings of this topic and might include in Wikipedia. And additionally, for the Wikipedia, it need updated. It update very quick, but there still need someone to update with the data. Sometimes like if we find some interesting data or some just some surveys result from some other scholars' research, and we can just include this analysis or include this data or include something to Wikipedia. For me, I think Wikipedia to professionalize, first thing is it helped me to get deeper in some topic, and in contrast, I can just contribute my knowledge to the Wikipedia as well. And also I enjoy just discuss with other editors or someone who just view this, who just view the page, and because there has some discussions based on page or some others editing based on the same page. I think this is really helpful, or I really enjoy the process.
That's great. Thank you, Yao. Any other thoughts? I'll just add that personally, Yao and Hassan and I presented at a conference together. That was fun about the course, so can lead to that kind of thing. Any other thoughts? Tasha?
I mean, I took the 2 courses for the election with the approval of my boss because I edit Wikipedia with students a lot, and she was in favor of the professional development for me. We've written a large portion of simple English Wikipedia at my institution. On a more personal, also professional level, I have found that writing about people from a lot of different backgrounds and identities has kind of rewired my internal thinking. So I used to, like, I always joke about how I've written about a Utah state senator, a mining executive, and an astrobiologist who in the past all would frankly have been white men in my mind. And now they're a Tongan American man, Papua New Guinean woman, and Black American woman. And it's just my internal picture of who can be what has fundamentally changed from editing. And so it's exciting to take different courses from you on different themes that stretch my internal socialized wiring in directions it might not have gone otherwise.
Great. Hillel?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think professionally, Wikipedia is very important to me. In my teaching, one of the main things I try to teach about is, well, one, can you paraphrase? Can you write about things in what we would call, I guess, in Wikipedia, an encyclopedic genre, right? It's amazing how students are not being trained how to just be able to write from that kind of point of view. Students are being taught how to write all sorts of opinion pieces. And so to me, when I taught a Wikipedia course, or just when I try to teach anything, I often use Wikipedia and Wikipedia policies in my teaching. And another thing that I try to do with students, and this is more like training small groups of students, non-large classes, I work with students on active listening and being able to deal with like religious radicals and difficult partisan people, right? And Wikipedia gives you an opportunity to deal with your emotions and encounter people who are going to go against what you're doing. Okay. And we saw this in our last class where one of the scholars was writing on an article about the Comstock laws. And she came up against a very smart lawyer who had a very strong position on how to write up this article. And that scholar, just like all of my students, need to learn how to manage your emotions while you're engaging with people on, these kinds of intellectual issues. So if it's a question of just being able to listen to another editor at Wikipedia or being able to engage with them in some constructive way, I think is an amazing experience. And I've been doing Wikipedia for a long time, and it has helped train me. Wikipedia helped train me back in the day to be a better listener and to be able to put up with people who I really disagreed with pretty strongly, so that I can now do the kind of research that I do. So for me, it's been very helpful.
That's great. And yeah, the additional perspective is very helpful. That's how the world works. And also like the whole process, like the series of guidelines from the Wikipedia community, you just let that you let that process play out and you get what you get on Wikipedia. I'm gonna stop asking questions for the moment because I have noticed there's some hands up, there's some great questions in the chat. And I do want to make sure that everyone attending has a chance to ask anything that's on their mind. So I think, Adrian, you've been super patient. Feel free to ask your question.
Adrian, you're muted.
Yeah. Or you can drop it in the chat, whatever is more convenient for you.
Okay.
Well, maybe Adrian stepped away. We'll circle back. I see Susan in the chat asks, could any of the panelists comment on including this activity in a graduate course? Sorry if this has been covered already. I have things to say about that, but I'll let you start if anyone has anything to say. Then I'll add that. So I run the Scholars and Scientists program at Wiki Education. My colleague Helene runs the what we call student program. She's on the call too. And that is geared specifically toward running Wikipedia assignments in the classroom. And we aim the program for college-age students and graduate students and anyone in between. And the whole idea is that you would get your own, what we call the dashboard, and that kind of helps meter and monitor the course. And there's some trainings that go along with it. So you would kind of be in charge of you would be me, and you'd be running a course, and your students would be you. And they would add content to Wikipedia. We would vet it to make sure that it looks good, and then it could be posted live and hopefully stick around. So if you have more questions about that, I'm sure Helene can answer those and I can put you in touch. And you can also go to this link, okay, great. Thanks, Colleen. Just drop that in the chat. So happy to have follow-ups about that. It's a great program. Let's circle back to Adrian. Adrian, are you there by any chance? Do you have a question still? Just stretching the digital hand. All right, well, we'll keep waiting. Does anyone else have a question for our panelists? If not, I have a couple more. So maybe if people are still thinking, one question I have for all of you is you've all participated in this program, in some cases multiple times, which is very, very cool. The whole idea behind the Scholars and Scientists program is to get experts or people passionate about a certain topic area to fill in the gaps on Wikipedia, either creating new articles, improving and refreshing existing ones. But moving forward, is there advice you'd give to newcomers? Are there things that you want to improve, things that we can work on, just ideas that you have looking into the future? Yeah, Tasha.
I'd just like to reflect the first of these courses I did, which was about COVID-19 and was in 2020. One of my classmates actually went on, he's a graphic designer, and he went on to work with you and with his professional association and the Smithsonian to run a series of courses focused on graphic design. So I would say that if there's an area for everyone watching this, if there's an area that you really love and you have strong professional connections, it is possible to help bring experts in your field in to this process and get them up to speed on editing, and it can make a really big difference in how your area of passion is portrayed.
Yes, we love working with new partners. Any other thoughts on looking ahead to the future, growing, what you learned?
I think, one thing that would be helpful, I think, for when you bring newcomers into a class, I'm not exactly sure how to do it, but if you could help people figure out where they can fit in and what style of engagement they want, I think it will help people, because I notice in some of the classes you get people like me and Tasha, I don't know the other people here that well, but who get very engaged and do a lot of the editing during the class. Some people, they sign up and for some reason or another, they don't end up really engaging. And I think part of it might just be, trying to find your niche when, if you say that you're interested in, I don't know, Joe Biden or somebody, right? You can't influence the Joe Biden article very easily, right? There's just too much going on there, right? So you need to find some angle for yourself. And like again, this thing that happened with the Comstock laws article is like, can Wiki EDU or can some cohort group like Tasha's cohort group, can they somehow help people engage with these worlds of editors that are more combative than you might personally want to be, right? So a lot of academics, I don't know, I mean, my personality is a little bit different, but a lot of the academics I know, their goal in life is not to get on social media and have flame wars, right? Or to be combative. But sometimes in Wikipedia, you do have to engage with people in sort of these, at least behind the scenes editing discussions. And it'd be great if the scholars who are brought in can somehow be supported in that regard. So that's just something to think about.
Hillel, I really love that feedback. Oh, Tasha, you have a response. Sorry.
Oh, I would just say that, like, in my own group, the way we deal with both what Hillel was talking about and the problem you posited was by showing people the wiki fauna page. So I wonder if, like, it's a little overwhelming and scary, talk about that deep well of Wikipedia culture, but to just start with, hey, there are also funny things going on, and here's an example, because that runs through so many different ways, positive and negative, that people interact with Wikipedia. I think it sets a tone for how you can choose how you want to engage. And then in my own group and in the various cohorts I've been in, I'm thinking about Yao's comment from earlier about feeling not good enough. One of the reasons, like, we talk a lot about how Wikipedia pages are never done, right? They're never complete. And actually, there is, I'm sorry, I'm trying to think of my reference, but there is a fair amount of research behind the idea that it's good for people to overcome their perfectionist tendencies by doing assignments in school that don't have an end goal that is a polished, finished, perfect thing. So there is actually a lot of psychological, like, I think we can talk more within the cohorts about the positive sense of not reaching perfection and completion.
That feels very real to me. I really appreciate that, Tasha.
Yeah, and I think that's very responsive to the comment that Deborah put into the chat about, to focus on the process. And I'm not sure exactly what you meant, Deborah. Did you mean the process of the scholars who are engaged as editors now? But I do think that's important.
Oh, Deborah, if you're trying to speak, I don't think any of us can hear you. Oh, that's what you said. Okay, great. Yeah, in the chat.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah,
I had no idea my audio was on. I apologize.
you're fine.
No, it's just what Tasha said kind of nailed it. We often focus on this needing a polished project at the end, but that's not what this is all about. The whole thing in Wikipedia is a process, right? Like you write something and then people add to it. And the way I framed it for my students is that you are creating a placeholder, you're creating a space for this person, kind of a framework. You don't have to have all the information. You just have to create the space and other people will come. And that sounds a little weird to them, that it doesn't have to be finished in a perfect, 5-page essay or whatever. But at the end of the semester, I actually had them go back because we did it in the first 8 weeks. So at the very end of the semester, I had them go back and look at what changes had been made to the page they created. Like read the talk, look at the history, and give a reflection on, well, how did that make them feel? Like if stuff got changed, what did they think? If stuff didn't get changed, what did they think? And I think that kind of drilled home for a lot of them that this is a process. And that's where the learning happens anyhow, right? It doesn't happen once you submit the paper, you're done at that point. And a lot of us get hung up on, well, how are we going to grade it? And I'm probably the wrong person to talk to about that because some of the Wiki people already know that I don't care about the grading. So anyhow, that's what I meant about the process, is focus on that part because that's where the learning happens anyhow.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Deborah. All right. Well, I know that we're a little short on time, so I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who has been attending this for the past hour. I wanted to give a very big thank you to all of our panelists, Hassan, Yao, Hillel, Anderson, and Tasha. Thank you so much for joining. If you're curious about taking future courses, I'll just drop the link in the chat, and I'm sure you can find this in the follow-up email that is going to go out with the recording. But I would love it if you could attend one of the courses. If you have more questions, feel free to ask us. I'm sure that all of our panelists would be quite happy to ask or to answer follow-up questions if you have any for them. And yeah, just one big thank you again to everybody for participating and for attending. It means so much to me. So thank you. And I think that's it. Thanks, everybody.